So what do you do if you've had COVID-19 and now you find yourself ostracized by the people around you? When we come back, we'll be talking to Nasreen Cariem, a qualified occupational therapist, and she'll shed some light on how we deal with the anxiety and stress and stigma around COVID-19. If you're just joining us, a warm welcome to the show. I'm your host, Bridgetti Limbanda. It's 106 days since lockdown happened in South Africa, and today we take a look at how we can deal with the anxiety and the stigma around COVID-19. My co-host is Viola Manuel. Viola, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I need that warm welcome. It is so cold. I needed that warm welcome. So to all of our viewers, warm welcome from Cape Town. But I've been saying to all my colleagues that I speak to across the country, I just said, I really think that I personally, I'm such a wimp when it comes to the cold. Johannesburg, they've got 5 degrees, 4 degrees in the morning. We go down to 12 degrees and we want to freeze up completely. But we needed a warm welcome. Loads has been happening. Our premier's contracted COVID. We've had a mayor pass away because of it. And I think everybody knows that today's topic is such an important topic because so many people that we know, it's coming closer and closer. So, initially it was we sort of heard about somebody suffering, but now we know that there's a cousin or auntie or uncle, Brigitte, that's, super close to us. So it's like 1 degree of separation now. So I think the storm has come.
I know, absolutely. And it's weird that, as you said, people previously said, well, I've never heard of someone that's had it. So maybe this whole COVID thing isn't real. Yeah. But more and more people, as you said, it's coming closer and closer to home. So people can relate to it. People are really starting to get anxious and feeling the anxiety around COVID. And so, as you said, our conversation today is quite an important one. So before we get Nasreen onto the screen, just a little bit more about her. She's an award-winning occupational therapist with a BSc Honours degree in Occupational Therapy, as well as a Diploma in Montessori Education with foundation phase teaching experience and a certificate in play therapy. She is passionate about helping children and adults live the best version of themselves. So, shall we get her onto the show?
That's a good idea. Let's do this.
Nazima, welcome to the show. We are so pleased to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bridgetti and Viola.
Thank you. Thank you for making the time to be on the show. It's such a interesting topic, and I think we want to have as much time as we can to chat to you. So I think we'll just jump into it now. I know you operate in Cape Town. You sort of operate from the Cape Flats, which is fantastic. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what made you choose this career sort of in civil society.
Okay, so since a child, I've always been that little one that wants to bring a smile on everyone's faces. And I've always wanted to help out wherever I could. And it went with me all the way through to high school. And I then realized that, what if I could actually make a career out of just making people happy and really helping them be their best, So what I did was I went into teaching kids because I felt that starting with children is definitely the best way to start because they need to ultimately have the rest of their lives ahead of them. And I felt that if one really wants to make change, that starting with a child would be the best because you'll be able to change the way they might view the world within themselves, they view themselves, and also just for them to know that the sky is the limit. And I felt starting with children would be key. But in doing so, in actually starting with teaching, I found that there were so many kids that were actually battling, be it the ones with learning disabilities or those that were little bright spots, but maybe perhaps presented with concentration difficulties, or just minor little difficulties that might have actually affected their performance along the way. And I took a special interest in those kids because I felt that we're living in a very fast-paced world where everything ends up being mainstream from the time that they start school all the way right through high school as well as university and in the big working world as well. And I felt that what happened to those kids, you know what I mean? And I felt that if I could make them my focus and actually enable them to really be their best, that they would be able to change their generations and we were able to keep that momentum going for all the kids in future. I didn't want them to feel given up on, and I made those kids my focus. And I found that occupational therapy gave me that focus, that ability to actually focus on them, because I was actually able to look at their abilities versus disabilities and their strengths versus their weaknesses, and be able to really allow them to use their strengths to really just bring out the best within themselves because it's one thing to be able to do that for a child, but to be able to enable them to do it for themselves and for them to
Yes.
see the light within themselves. For me, that is everything, you know. And I
Yeah.
wanted that to make that my focus, and for me, that is my mission every day to just really be able to help transform a child's life, a child's world, so that they can be happy and that they can find the success within themselves, for the rest, and they can be set for life, and
Awesome.
I also find that with adults as well, similarly as well with
Yeah.
adults, everyone's going through something. Everybody has a little internal battle that they need to face and that they need to overcome, and similarly, that would also have affected their performance. So to
Yes.
also focus on that and actually enable them to live the best version of themselves as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, a lot of people are struggling, not just adults, but also children. And sometimes we tend to forget,
Yeah.
the extent to which our children are affected by lockdown and by COVID. And so, how should parents that has got children with learning disabilities or emotional challenges approach this lockdown situation? Because remember, we were all kind of thrown in the deep end. There was no training, there was no time for adjustments. It's kind of this is happening now. How do parents deal with this, especially children with learning disabilities, because they're not trained to teach their children. That's why they go, they have special schools. So, what is it that parents can do to make the situation better?
Okay, so first of all, what I found was a very common pattern with parents was that there's a lot of anxiety. So it was like with the bringing of COVID-19 came another onset of a new onset of anxiety, both with parents as well as children. And children do tend to reflect their parents in many ways. So I found that a very common pattern was anxiety. So people were very, very concerned about. I mean, naturally, all of us have been concerned about the pandemic and the effects on our lives, on our well-being, on our children, on our work, on the economy. So naturally as well, I found that parents, the anxiety was actually feeding into the kids, and kids were actually starting to pick up on those anxieties. And I actually kept contact with parents and children throughout the time, and many of them would turn to me for support during this time. And I found that it was very, very, very apparent that anxiety seemed to take over
Mm.
everyone's lives at the
Mm.
and children as well. So children were concerned about. I had a lot of parents saying to me that the kids do not want to go back to school, and similarly, parents as well had many of them just decided at the time. that there was no way that they were going to send their kids back to school. That it was a no issue. They were just not going to send them to school, and you know what? It was just they felt it was too high risk at the time. So of
Yeah.
course now that the regulations have changed, I find that anxiety remains a very, very strong factor, both
Yeah.
for the parents as well.
Yeah. So Nazreen, the levels of anxiety are changing. When lockdown initially started, the anxiety was around how will we cope with this. Then the discourse sort of changed to the economy and how would we cope, just financially. And now, of course, this whole discussion around sending kids back to school. There's the whole debate around whether children should repeat the year. So there's a lot going on. With my son, he's in grade 5. Basically half of his classes going back and half of his classes going to continue with online learning. But there's so many rules and regulations now about getting the kids back to school. We're putting them into a situation where you've got overworked teachers, stressed out teachers with all these new regulations that they are now expected to also be sort of pioneering and assisting with. And we're now being asked to send our kids to school. How should parents really be approaching this whole return to school? What tips do you have for moms and dads really thinking, okay, I'm going to send my child back to school? Just how do we get parents ready and kids ready for this return?
Okay, so I think that, like I said before, like the anxiety has been a natural common response to the pandemic and the effects on children as well as adults. But at the end of the day, I think that we can all attest to the fact that it's been, like as you said, it's been 106 days now since lockdown. I think that people have somehow found a way to cope with the new norm. I don't think any of us could ever get used to it. I think it's something that has been a bit of a dark shadow over everybody for quite some time now, and also the uncertainty of not knowing where we all stand and how long it's going to be this way still. And for me, my message to parents has been throughout the time that we can't unfortunately do anything about that which is out of our control. So with COVID-19 being among us, there's nothing that we can do about it, but we can only really control our actions. We can only really control what we do. And I also have said to children who have spoken out to me about how they feel, and I said to them that, you know what, um, it might not feel the easiest thing to really go return to school, but at the
Mm,
end of the day, the good sign, to look at it positively, the fact that it's a sign that the world is starting to adjust.
yes.
It's a sign that people are starting to, you know, wrap their minds around it and find a way to actually be optimistic and actually deal with it as best as possible. Because at the end of the day, we can't all remain caged within our homes forever. And children as well. What I've actually found was that a lot of kids have actually been suffering in terms of their functioning. From being as active as possible and having a strong routine at school every single day, they've
Yeah.
now been at home. And even though there has been online learning, it's been a huge change. So you find that kids actually thrive on routine and
Yes.
structure, and that was taken away from them. And with them being able to go back to school, it actually brings back that sense of structure. It brings back familiarity. It brings back a sense of positivity where they get to interact with their peers once again.
I think
It
we've
actually
lost.
allows. Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, we can hear you. I think Brigetti's just we there might be a problem with her connection, but please, yeah. So I do think that they. I love what you're saying, because what you're saying is let's start talking to our kids about the fact that there's a little bit of sunshine now. It's really a situation of you guys are getting to go back to school to something familiar. That means we're starting to return to something that and it's absolutely true. Kids love the structure. So to not have had structure for so long, and shame for as a parent, I've tried. I've tried as much as I can, but they are, it's just a challenge. So I hear you. I think it's a good thing, to sort of counter that anxiety with allowing them to see it as a positive thing.
Absolutely. I feel we always have to look at the silver lining. And I've actually seen, and I've been monitoring children returning to school, and that you actually see the joy on their faces. It's I think at the end of the day, it's a good sign. It's a sign that we are making the most of what we can. We are being optimistic. We are making the most of a very difficult situation. And I think that, to me, kudos goes to teachers out there who actually put themselves out there in the firing line to actually make it happen, and for them
Absolutely.
not giving up on kids as well. Because I promise you, children have been coming to OT sessions and they've been so happy to be back at school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's been a lot of conversation around this, and there seems to be a big push um, towards the feeling that we're doing our children more harm by keeping them out of school. There's a lot of unknown things that we don't know. We're not quite sure about. We're still figuring things as we go along. And that's the difficulty with COVID-19. And so one of the things they're saying is the science so far is showing that the spread amongst children is significantly lower than with adults. And so they're saying that, the emotional harm that we're doing our children by taking them out of their routine and the social interaction that they need is possibly doing them more harm. So, with more and more schools now considering to go back, how can we help our children make this transition? Because obviously, children feel the anxiety from society, from social media, they feel the anxiety that they get from their parents. How do we best help our children transition back into a new normal?
Okay, so education is always key. I always say knowledge is power. So at the end of the day, you really just want to be able to prepare them as best as possible. You want to obviously make sure that they have a very good understanding of precautionary measures. To really educate them about social distancing, and to also educate them that social distancing is also physical distancing as well. So to let them know that, look, I mean, you can't actually there'll be no hugging of your peers, there'll be no handshakes. So, because I mean, little kids are still small, they don't
Yeah,
really understand all these things immediately. So we need to make it fun and exciting for them, and we need to say to them, look, here's a picture of what it means to social distance with someone. And I mean, Google makes things really fun. I mean, there's YouTube. Kids love YouTube, so you can actually make it so much fun for them by actually going onto YouTube and showing them pictures and little videos about social distancing so they can understand exactly what it's all about. That it is about 1.8 meters, 1.8 meter distance, but actually showing them what it's about. You can actually download it for them and you can actually play a little game and say, let's see how many steps we can take so that we know we are really socially distancing. And that'll make it so much fun for them, to actually educate them on how they can make sure that they are actually monitoring their own social
yeah,
distancing. And then also the use of masks, I mean, we need to educate them why they're using masks. Kids are so resilient and so intelligent, and they just want to know why they're doing things. But us as adults as well, we also want to know why are we doing something. If someone tells you to do something, you want to know why. So
yeah,
similarly with kids as well, explain to them that this is the reason that you have to wear a mask, and this is exactly how to go about it, and you have to make sure that that you don't take it off at all times. Even kids that have asthma as well, for their purposes as well, to wear masks. It's very, very important. I've also been encouraging a lot of children to use the mask as well as the visor, because you actually find that the mask covers just your mouth area and the nose area. But remember, COVID-19 can also be spread through your eyes as well. So you find that if if someone, for argument's sake, hasn't been wearing a mask and perhaps there's saliva transmission from them and it goes into the eyes, it's also a way in which it can be transmitted. So the visors actually help kids very nicely because it's like a little shield, and they look so. It's very cute actually to see them
yeah,
wearing it, and they
yeah,
actually look confident because they know they've got that double precaution as well. But also
yeah,
very important to teach them about sanitizing. I always say to parents, keep a pocket-sized sanitizer in their pocket, and also like perhaps maybe wet wipes in the other packet as well, so that they can just be wary of these surfaces that they need to be wiping off and stuff. But in
yeah,
a way, it actually teaches kids a sense of responsibility. It
yeah,
teaches them a sense of being able to take care of themselves, and it actually helps them view the world differently but
Yes.
also from a more realistic point of view.
Yeah.
So it's very important to look at it positively because your positivity will rub off on
Yeah.
yourself.
So it's about giving them the information. And I also have found that especially the little ones, they take the whole mask thing super seriously. I mean, once you've explained to them why they need to have it on, I mean, they are, they're just like, ambassadors for masks wear, mask wearing, and they just seem to take it very seriously. And so it's a good thing to just keep them educated and just keep reminding them of things. But with like with most things we don't understand and we don't know, there's always this possibility of a stigma being attached. So especially with
Absolutely.
moms and dads who might contract COVID for whatever reason, they might be frontline workers, they might sit in situations where socially things are a bit economically challenging, so there's a lot of people in the space, not easy to socially distance and physically distance in terms of those sort of circumstances. So how do we help our kids deal with the stigma when somebody that they love actually has COVID?
I think the important thing is to communicate with children. I think it's very important that parents communicate with kids from the beginning, that they can understand that, I mean, at the end of the day, nobody wants to have COVID. Nobody wants to get it. So at the end of the day, it's very important for parents to explain that to their children, that this is what it's all about, and there is a stigma attached to it that nobody wants to get it. So, I mean, I think we can all relate to having heard that when you hear that there's been someone that's had it, the initial reaction is always, okay, fine, the place is going to shut down, and it's going to be closed, businesses will be closed until further notice. So automatically, there has been quite a strong stigma attached to when a certain person has actually suffered from COVID-19. So automatically, it is actually there, and understandably so because of the pandemic being new and with everything being new as well. I'm sure that you recall back then when HIV/AIDS started as well.
Yes.
There were so many stigmas around that as well. So I think it's human nature that people always respond with anxiety when it comes to the unknown or fear of the unknown. But as soon as they are familiar with how to take care, or how to prevent, or how to actually take those precautions into consideration, that they are calmer and they're more at ease because they know that they're doing everything that they can. So similarly for children as well, if we educate them and we keep them completely aware of what they need to do, and also for them to understand that once somebody who has had it, once they're tested negative and the virus is out of their system, that it is actually out of their system and that they can actually have peace of mind and perhaps maybe learn from that person. Perhaps maybe if there was a child at school whose parent had it, to actually learn from that child who's obviously now perhaps tested negative, to actually learn from them as as in what did they do, how did they go about it, and in so doing to actually empower children about it and starting a new sense of positivity about the virus so that at the end of the day
Yeah.
we want everybody, all the kids to actually have their anxiety levels regulated. We want everyone to actually get to a point where they feel that they are doing everything that they can, taking all precautions that they need to in order to help
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah. So that's amazing. So it's really just about continuing to educate, and using it as a learning opportunity. So if somebody does have it and they've now successfully gone through it, the virus is out of their system, and ask that kid to actually share the experience of having somebody in their space who's had COVID allows them a lot more control, because it allows them to feel that they have knowledge and that they have something to pass on to others. So I think that's a very, very important point, Nazreen. What about adults? So many adults have anxieties about returning to the workplace. What advice do you have for them?
Okay, so with adults, obviously we know that adults are far more high risk than children. So in terms of adults returning to work, I think that what I've seen that with most corporates that people are still working remotely, and it's mainly those who are in professional services such as, for example, the hairdressing industry, the restaurant industry, and of course, health workers as well. So I would say that look, the anxiety around that, I would say that it's very important. I mean, I think at this point it would be very important for them to also be able to educate themselves So, yeah, attending support groups wouldn't really be an option right now because we still want to maintain that social distancing.
Mm.
But I would say that also just there are so many resources available right now about COVID-19. So to actually look on the internet and actually find out about what they can do around COVID-19 to
Yeah.
prevent themselves from getting. But also, if in the event that they do actually have it, what to actually do in order to maintain that optimal health, the steps that they need to take, and I think at the end of the day, most people are afraid of losing their jobs. Most people are afraid of people are going through lots and lots of anxieties around role loss and functional loss due to COVID-19 lockdown. So we find that with lockdown, people went through a stage of feeling anxious, but also depressed as well because they felt that they weren't really in their comfort zone. I mean, at the end of the day, people get up in the morning, they go to work, they come back, and the same, and basically it gets repeated. But now to actually be in the home environment and working from home, despite whatever's happening in the background, in the Zoom meetings, and
Yeah.
it's been quite a big change. So I think that adult anxieties have been more around um, the notion of is this how it's always going to be from now onwards? I mean, like, how do we adapt? Are we ever going to be getting back into our cars and heading to our offices? So I think that parents'
Yeah.
anxieties have been really much around that. Some have said that they actually like working remotely, though. But I would say that for parents, it's just been around that functional loss and that sense of role loss because I mean, in terms of being functional and being at work, it's natural to see your work as being part of your identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But there's, yeah. So Nazreen, exactly what you're saying. There's just been so much has changed. People have responded differently to it. There's some people who are extremely anxious about things. Other people are a lot more cautious, but and sort of casual about things. But I think it's important for us to respect the way people are responding to things. If there's somebody who's super sensitive about it, respect that. If there's other people who are a bit more casual, but I think it's about educating yourself. But what's also been very important, which is something we've been pushing on the show, is make sure that the source of your information is credible. Make sure that you're actually going to the COVID-19 website and not ending up on a website that's going to tell you, if you chomp on a piece of garlic and turn anti-clockwise 3 times, COVID will go away. We need to make sure that the source of the information that you are researching is a credible source of information. We've really been directing everybody to the COVID-19 website so that people can actually get relevant information. And just a final question from my side, and that is really around what are you seeing? What are people, in terms of this anxiety that people are feeling? How would you sort of help people? Like we've had a few comments from viewers who are saying, all the rules have gone out of the window. We've had one comment now that says, I'm giving my son more screen time than he should have, and those kinds of things. Everybody's just trying to cope. What's your final words or closing words to people watching the show who are feeling high levels of anxiety, feeling misunderstood at the moment, feeling that they're all alone? What are those final words that you would actually share with them?
okay, so that's actually a very, very important question. I don't know if you've noticed that there's been an increase in the suicidal rates since lockdown has actually started. And there's actually been many cases of suicide. And I think that um, what has actually happened is that people that present with clinical anxiety have actually been placed in a predicament where they are forced to face their fears and anxieties all by themselves, and not being able to reach out to a friend, physically or personally, not being able to reach out to anyone, but actually being in these circumstances, there's nowhere to run and there's no one that they can turn to other than really face their situations by themselves. I would say that if you're presenting with clinical anxiety, that it's very important to know that there are methods of dealing with it. Um, that's why we actually have a psychiatrist who actually prescribe the meds for those purposes. I found that I've also been researching that a lot, and that there's been a rise in depression tremendously since the
Yeah.
onset of lockdown and COVID-19. And that's because, as we know, anxiety can lead to depression, and it's
Yeah.
actually a clinical situation. It's not about whether you are happy with your life or not. If you present with clinical anxiety, I'm not talking about the normal anxiety that we all feel about the
Mm.
day to day. It's more about if you present with clinical anxiety, it's very important to seek help. Very, very
Yeah.
important. And I think that we've all found that anxiety and depression is so common, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's nothing to be ashamed about or be embarrassed about, but to rather seek the help. Make sure that you're on the right medication and that you're taking it regularly because you can actually live a happy, prosperous life.
A better version of yourself, the best version of yourself possible. Nasreen, thank you so much for being on the show. It was amazing chatting to you. I think one of the things that Brigitte and I have been speaking about quite a lot is, continue to reach out to the people that stay alone, are alone. Because of, it might be that they're high risk and so they're not able to go and do their own shopping or anything like that. But just try and find those people in your circle and continue to support them with a telephone call or WhatsApp message, just something that encourages them and tells them that they're not alone and that you care about them. I think that's important. But it was wonderful having you on the show. Thank you so much for all your insights. I know that a lot of the viewers have really appreciated it. So thank you.
Only my
Nasreen,
pleasure.
before we close off, can you let people know how they can reach out to you?
Yes, sure. So you can log on to my website, www.occt.co.za.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for what you've shared with us and with our audience today. And I think we want to close off with saying become more aware of the people around you, the people in your circle. Let's take care of each other. We're all in this together. We're all learning as we move forward. And we can make the world a whole lot better by just reaching out and taking care of one another. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great evening further.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Bye-bye.